What's going on, everybody? This is Robo and Kyle from All Bark, and this is our Pistons 2023 NBA Draft Big Board.
What's going on, guys? Kyle here from All Bark. Excited to get this video going for you.
So what we're going to do today pretty much is just go over all the Pistons options at pick 5, what they would possibly do in this draft. We'll go over each player, pros and cons of each one, and then pretty much just talk about what the Pistons have come planned for this draft.
Yeah, just what Robo said, and we're also going to talk about if we were Weaver, we're going to put ourselves in his seat and try to think about what he does, what he has on his current big board, as well as the decisions he wants to make going forward, because this obviously is a very big season for the Pistons. A lot went wrong this past year, so we also want to hit on a little bit about their current situation and kind of how that fits into the draft, because sitting at pick 5, you can argue best player available is always the pick, but there is more nuance to this year's draft. So we want to go more into detail with all these different picks we have to us at pick 5.
Yeah. So a little bit before we talk about the pick, we want to get into a little bit about the Pistons' current situation, what they possibly be looking at to do with this pick, whether they're going to continue the tanking strategy where they continue to go for the high ceiling, low floor, risky picks, or whether they're trying to win. So what do you think Weaver is targeting here with the 5th pick? What type of player is he looking at?
Well, given the current situation the Pistons are in, I mean, they had a horrible year, obviously, with Cade going down with the injury. That kind of set things back a year, right? And with the draft, they were able to find Cade, Duren, and Ivy in the draft, which we believe as fans, as Weaver believes, those are their 3 cornerstones, okay? So Ivy and Cade going forward is going to be the 1A and the 1B, right? And that's the hardest part to do in a rebuild, is to kind of find those 2 guys that can initiate the offense and also score at a high level, which we've already seen Cade and Ivy are going to be at for this franchise. So dropping back to 5 hurt very bad for all fans in the lottery, but at the same time, it could be a blessing, because sitting at pick 5, you have a number of different players with all different skill sets that all project to be kind of 3rd, 4th options, you could say. Maybe someone like Whitmore or Ausar, however you want to pronounce it, could develop into a higher option. But with this pick here, it's almost a luxury in a sense, to where you can really kind of pick for fit while also swinging for ceiling as well, because all of these players project to having a high ceiling while also having a decent enough floor to where they can impact the team day one. And we're going to go more into detail of who those 5 players are that we believe is on our personal board, as well as those 5 players we think are on Weaver's board right now.
Yeah, and I think it was a tough year for the Pistons fans, obviously, with Cade going down. Obviously, he was a huge part of the team, pretty much the entire team, honestly. You already have your 1, 2, and 3 with Cade, Ivy, and Duren. So I kind of agree with you. Had we been picking in the top 3 of this draft, we'd be getting probably maybe a better player. But fit-wise, I think the only one that really would have made perfect sense would have been Brandon Miller. And obviously Wembanyama, he would have fit perfectly no matter what. But, you know, if you were in there in the 2 or 3 range and Scoot is the pick, then you start wondering, is a 3 guards what you want to go with? Do you run Cade at like a point forward situation? So I think falling down to pick 5, you kind of just take the player that falls into your lap, or you just start thinking about who is going to fit us the best as, you know, a luxury 4th option. It's not often teams are going to be able to put a 5th overall pick as their 4th option. So the Pistons definitely could be in a good spot here to upgrade their roster and into probably what their most likely goal is going to be, which is to make the play-in. I think the team definitely wants to make the playoffs first off, but the more likely scenario is that they'll push for the play-in this season, try to be anywhere between the 7 and 10 seeds, especially with a guy like Bojan, who, when he signed that contract extension, they told him that the goal was to win, and he bought in. You can even hear with his interview when Cade got hurt, and they were talking about the impact of that in the season, and he's talking about Cade was pretty much the entire offense and the entire defensive game plan. You know, pretty much every play they ran was through Cade. Defensively, he was their rock. So when he went down, the whole season was basically just about development and growth for the individual young guys. So this next season, they're going to be looking to make that roster better, so in case another injury happens to another player, they're not entering that mode again, and they can just continue pushing on until the player returns. So let's go ahead and get into this. We'll talk about the 5 players we think are in play at pick 5. I'll start off with the very obvious, unlikely scenario, but obvious guy if he's still there on the board, is Brandon Miller. I think he's probably the top guy on the board for Weaver. We know that it was pretty likely he would go at pick 2 or 3 if that's where we landed. I think he's the top guy on the board. So what do you think if he is there at 5, if that's just how the draft pans out with the Thompson twins and maybe Whitmore or Jarace going to the Rockets? If he were to slip to the Pistons, what would they be getting in Brandon Miller?
Yeah, that's obviously a huge if, and there still is a chance that could happen. And I think we've already seen reports from James Edwards that if Brandon Miller was there at pick 2, that's probably going to be the pick based on reports he's probably heard from Weaver since he reports from them. And that's a bona fide perfect fit for this roster, a 3-4 hybrid that can rebound, that can score from all 3 levels, that can catch and shoot, can play make as well. That would be the dream right here for this team going forward. So if he is there, you're getting a guy that can slide in right there with Bojan, kind of be that 3rd option, that 4th option, depending on the night. Whoever's hot, give them the ball. But with Miller, you're getting a guy who's 6'9", can handle the ball out of the pick and roll, can read and react, can make passes with either hand, can score at the rim, and obviously get to the free throw line too, and then just a dynamite 3-point shooter off the catch. Show some prowess off the dribble too, but that's probably more of a development for him. But with NBA spacing, you'll see that rise probably this year. But with Miller, like I said when I first started talking, you're getting a guy that's a perfect fit for this roster, for this rebuild. And he's also showed some great signs on the defensive end. So with him, that would be a home run pick if he was to fall, similar to last year when Ivy fell to us at 5. And a lot of people believe that Ivy could have the highest ceiling in that draft. I wouldn't say Miller has the highest ceiling in this draft, but you are getting a super high floor player that does project to be potentially an All-NBA player, probably a 3rd All-NBA player in his prime, if everything goes right. So unlikely, but if it does happen, that's guaranteed to be the pick right there at 5.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think that's a home run pick if he's there at 5. There is some talk of him slipping to some guys that have him lower on their boards. I do think he's likely going to be either a Hornet or a Blazer, or if they trade out of the pick, he'll go to whoever the Blazers trade with pick 3. But if the draft goes a certain way, where maybe Scoot is the 2nd pick, and or let's say if Scoot is the 2nd pick and the Blazers trade the pick, and somebody falls in love with the Thompson twin, and then the Rockets look at their situation with Jabari Smith, and even though they're different players in their own, they may see the fit as a bit weird with Miller, and maybe they're a bit higher on Whitmore or Jarace to be a better fit in Houston, and he falls to them. I think it's a home run situation for the Pistons. I definitely think he's got to be the top guy on Weaver's board, since we know that he was up there being considered with Scoot had we landed the 2nd pick. But let's move on to who we have at number 2 on Weaver's board. I believe Weaver is probably higher on Jarace than some other teams may be. I think Jarace Walker's fit with the Pistons and the front court with Jalen Duren is just something that Weaver's going to fall in love with. He loves his big men. He loves guys that can play defense. He talked about earlier this season about how in order to compete in the East, you're going to have to beat the teams like the Cavs and the 76ers that have big front courts that can just dominate down low. Milwaukee, they have big front courts with Giannis, Bobby Portis, Brook Lopez. You're going to have guys that can defend the paint, and Jarace can do that as well as the perimeter. I think he's probably the 2nd option here for Weaver. Go ahead and give me your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I would agree as well. Like I said before, this is a draft where you're picking at pick 5, you come off 17 wins. The common sense is best player available, right? But with all these guys at pick 5 in that range, they're all at the same tier if you ask me and if you ask many other people. So at that point, you have to kind of fit the guy that fits the best as well. And I think Jarace Walker, day 1 starter at the 4 position, can slide to the 3 in some lineups. People hate on his shooting for some reason. He shot 3 threes a game, I believe, 2.8 to be exact, in college. That's a guy that can catch and shoot. He's still developing that ability, and he'll shoot more at the next level due to more spacing. Offensively as well, I mean, he's shown incredible flashes on some on-ball creation ability, scoring in the post. Obviously, can get up and catch any lob that's thrown to him. Can catch an attack, can catch and actually attack and make a read and pass to a corner if needed to. Very smart passer, similar to Duren at the elbow. And then defensively, I mean, just an absolute monster. Probably will be able to guard 1 through 5, unless he's too exhausted to do so. And the thing is with Duren is Duren projects to be a good defender because of his size and length, but reality is he's better on the offensive end than defensively. So I think to help Duren out for his long-term success is putting a defensive specimen next to him to alleviate some of that pressure. And I think Jarace Walker, and we'll go into some other guys in the later on in the video, but Jarace Walker is a seamless fit with Duren. Can also play along Stewart, can also play along Wiseman, can play along Bagley if needed. Can he get out and run? And I think is also a high IQ player, a very confident player. And also I think he has a lot more untapped potential that he probably showed in high school that he wasn't able to do in college, that he could do with more space in the NBA. So I think Weaver embodies the high character he seems to have, and he seems like a hard worker. He also played on a top 3 team in college and has to stand for something similar to Miller. It's hard to be good in college with so many teams and so many different things going on. But Jarace Walker for me, yes, is going to be probably number 1 on Weaver's board after Brendan Miller.
Yeah, I would agree. I think you're right on with the whole college point. It's very hard for freshmen to be high impact players in college just because it's so experience based. And anytime a freshman can impact the game the way Jarace did, you know that you got something special in that player. Especially with how many games Houston won. I know they didn't have the hardest schedule at all, but they played Alabama. They played a few other tough teams, and he had a great season overall. I do think when you take Jarace, the only con would be potentially the fit with the wings. I know Weaver said he wanted to address the wing spot this offseason. So if you take Jarace, your small forwards are going to be Bojan, and then backup was going to be Livers. They may not trust Livers to be in the 10-man rotation just right out the gate if they're trying to make the play-in, so maybe that's something they address in free agency. However, if they were to strike out on free agency, maybe the fit with Jarace wouldn't be the best because of the need at wing and having enough bigs already. But I kind of agree with you. I think Jarace, as I said in my breakdown, I buy his shot creation ability. I think he can actually play on the wing if you need him to, even though he is more of a traditional 4 or modern 4, I should say. He'll play a lot of power forward, but he can run possessions on the wing when he needs to. He can hit shots from the perimeter. He can create his own shot a little bit. It's definitely something he's going to want to improve on. And some people don't buy fully, but I believe he has great potential basically pretty much anywhere on the floor. He'd be a great fit for the Pistons. Moving on to number 3, I think Cam Whitmore is probably the number 3rd option on Weaver's board. I think for me, he's a top 6 prospect regardless. I think Whitmore his just athleticism and scoring ability is very advanced for what the Pistons would need at the wing spot. He's an instant impact type of player who can just come in and get buckets. He doesn't need the ball in his hands at all times. The lack for him, the thing he lacks most is playmaking, but that's something that the Pistons don't really need at this point with Cade's elite playmaking. Obviously, Ivy showed a lot of playmaking flashes, averaging 6 to 7 assists per game down the stretch. And we've seen Duren make some great passes, even though he's a center. So playmaking is not really an issue for me. But however, that still is something you're not going to be getting with him right out the gate, especially. But yeah, I'm gonna love to hear your thoughts on Cam Whitmore and why he would be number 3 on Troy Weaver's board.
I agree. He's probably number 3 on Weaver's board as well. He could even be higher on other people's boards or even Weaver's. Like I said, this draft, all these prospects, they're on the same tier, they're on the same playing field. It's kind of just nitpicking what you like and what you don't like to rank these guys because to me they're all even. You could argue Whitmore has the highest ceiling in the draft just because of his athleticism, his 6'6", 6'7" height, his strength, his weight. But I think you're getting a guy who, to me, on film at least, he looks like a bigger, maybe a little bit less skilled Anthony Edwards offensively to me. Maybe Edwards had more of that shot creation ability, but their jumpers look identical. They're both freak athletes. But you are getting a guy who you don't want to be your one of your 1 or 2 primary ball handlers, which, like for us, like I said, this is almost a luxury pick because you're picking guys to be at that 3rd or 4th option unless they develop into a higher level, which is just icing on the cake. But Ivy, Cade handling the rock, kicking him to him in the corner, catch and shoot, catch and attack, attacking a closeout, dunking on anybody. I mean, he would fit right in offensively. Defensively, I think he wants to get after it defensively. I think he would have some growth on that end too. But playmaking, you're not really getting much there. But I still think in terms of offensive ability and fit with Cade and Ivy, and even playing with Stewart and Duren, he would fit right there at the 3. We could play off Bojan as well because Bojan can handle the rock. Perfect fit there, just like Walker. I mean, a lot of these guys are going to fit in well. It's kind of just who you want at that pick.
Yeah. Yep, I agree with Whitmore. You're going to get a player who can make an instant impact, have fairly high ceiling. I think he'd be a great option for the Pistons there. I think the 4th prospect on Weaver's board is probably Ausar Thompson. I think if he is the pick, I think that's somebody that Weaver would love. We already know, his interest in Kevin Ollie as the head coach. Kevin Ollie was he was head of player development at Overtime Elite, so there's a connection there. It was something like that, and so he was basically, obviously you have the OTE connection there with Thompson and Kevin Ollie. If that is who he hires as head coach, we know it's pretty much right now between him and Charles Lee, but we know Weaver does like Overtime Elite if he's interested in hiring Kevin Ollie, even though he does have other background as well with UConn. But also we know Cade Cunningham is a fan of the Thompson twins. I know he tweeted, I think this was last summer, he tweeted the Thompson twins can play. So we know that he also is high on him. And I think Ausar is a bit different from Amen because, Amen I think is definitely more of the on-ball guard, whereas Ausar definitely, he's a great ball handler. We've seen the clip that went viral the other day about his ball handling. He truly could be an elite ball handler in the NBA. He's got a bit of a better jump shot than Amen does at this point. Great height, great playmaking skills, great athleticism. Still a lot of work to go with the shooting, obviously, but he's not as far away as Amen is. He's not the same athlete as Amen, but still he is definitely one of the better athletes in this draft, and somebody that Weaver could absolutely fall in love with later down the stretch when he goes through workouts and stuff, and could be in play at pick 5 for sure.
Yeah, piggybacking off of that, I agree. Ausar is probably number 4 on the board, or was it 5? Sorry.
4. It was 4.
Number 4 on the board, and yeah, he has a lot of connections with Kevin Ollie at OTE. Cade likes the Thompson twins. He's probably talked to them a few times as well. So, but with Ausar, I think if he came to Detroit, at least for me, day one wise, you're probably getting a little bit of a lesser impact.
Right.
I say that now, but that could obviously change. He could surprise. But he's also stepping into a really good situation here if he was to be a Piston, because like I said, he can play make, he can initiate offense, he can run, he can play a pick and roll. But coming off and playing with Caden Ivey, he wouldn't have the pressure going into a new NBA role where he has to be the one or number 2 guy, handle the rock at time, learn on the fly, struggle a bit. He kind of come in over here, focus on the defensive end, guard the best wing over there, which that's probably his best ability right now is his defense, and let the offense kind of come to him more naturally without the pressure, really not really look to score and just take things very slowly. So I think in terms of Ausar, he should be really eyeing Detroit from a personal standpoint. I think it would be a good fit for his development. But for me personally, I'm not too high on him just because we don't know a ton about them. But also, something I didn't know as well as in the OTE, they actually shoot from NBA range. So that 3-point line is NBA range, right? Yeah. So those percentages could be a little bit misleading considering they're shooting from NBA range. And a lot of players, even Cade came into the NBA, had to adjust to that further line. So they're already used to that. So even if he's shooting 30% or whatever it was around, that's probably going to be higher next year just due to the experience he already had at OTE, right? So That's something to think about. Defensively, he could be the best defender in the class, either him or Ahmed or Jarace, even Hendricks. There's some monster defenders in this class. Obviously, Wembanyama probably, but after him, one of those guys. So
yeah, even Case and Wallace as well. Great defensive players.
Yeah, so you'll see what happens with the Sir, but he's most likely number 5 on the board.
We had him for Weaver, I think it'd be 4 just because of the connection with the.
Oh, I'm sorry, I keep getting numbers mixed up.
Yeah, well, that's because on our board we have it a bit differently. But with Weaver, the one we believe Weaver may target is probably Ausar, just because of the connection with the Thompson twins and knowing Cade likes them, and he definitely wants defense and somebody who can play on the wing a bit. I agree with you. I think you're getting a very high ceiling player if you draft Ausar. However, the fit isn't the best, and he's not going to give you as much of an immediate impact. I mean, we could be wrong. Maybe he does, but it's not as likely as the other, I'd say. And especially with the shooting, you're kind of, if you draft Ausar, you're probably getting somebody who isn't going to impact winning as much as some of the other players right out of the gate, which, as we've discussed already, the Pistons' goal is probably going to be shifting towards winning. So if the Pistons were deciding to punt another season away, or they didn't really care about making the play-in, they're just continuing to try to build up the roster, then Ausar may be higher on the board. But I believe for just this sake, I think the smart thing for Weaver to do would be take somebody who's a little bit more of a sure thing at this point. Which is, I think, pick 5, who we have number 4 on our board for the 5th pick. Somebody who may not be projected to go 5 very often, but he's definitely a guy who is going to be in play just because of sheer talent and fit. He possibly could be the best fit in the entire draft for the Detroit Pistons. There's just maybe it's slightly of a reach because he may not have the same ceiling, and maybe a little bit lower floor than some of the other guys. But Taylor Hendricks, I think, is a guy that definitely is in play here at 5. If Weaver knows that this is his guy, he won't even worry about a reach. This is pick 5, not pick 1 or 2. So if he really believes Taylor Hendricks is the guy, he may look at the fit and just say, look, he's an excellent shooter. He plays defense, great shot blocker, great hustle guy. He does everything you can ask of him. The only thing really with him is ball handling, but again, you're not going to ask him to do that too much.
You don't need that.
So I think that's definitely a guy that I think is higher on Ausar, or higher on the board than Ausar for us. Maybe not for Weaver, just because he's probably projected to go a bit lower. But this is also a guy that, if he's available later in the lottery, picks 9, 10, 11. If they are looking to move Bojan and a team is interested in making that trade, you may be able to throw something else in that trade with Bojan to get that pick, and maybe Hendricks is paired with the top 5 with the 5th overall pick as well. If he's not just straight up used with the 5th pick. So I think Hendricks is definitely a guy that will be on the board for Weaver for sure, as someone to think about. You can go ahead and give your thoughts on Taylor as well.
Yeah, once again, I mean, these 4 or 5 guys right here, they're all in the exact same playing field. And you can ask some people, but even me, like, I'm extremely high on Taylor Hendricks. I think he easily could be the pick at 5 over any of these guys that I really wouldn't care. I'd be happy with the pick.
Great.
Just because of what he projects to be at the NBA level. He's a 6'9", modern 4, the best shooter of all these prospects, hands down, the best shooter of all these prospects. We could take at pick 5. Seamless with Duren, shot blocker, help side defender, weak side shot blocker that can once again help Duren and help him on the defensive end. This is a guy that can also catch an attack. I think he's made some good passes off of live dribbles as well. He's obviously going to be improving offensively with his handling. These guys are all young. They're only 18, 19, 20. So, and I just think putting him with both. I mean, could you imagine Cade and Ivy running the show, and then you have Bojan and Hendricks on the corners? Yeah. I mean, how do you defend that?
Yeah, it's similar to what with OKC. I know Shea is just on a different planet, but the amount of gravity that he has that just allows Jalen Williams and even a guy like Josh Giddey, who isn't the best shooter, but much higher percentage last year, so many open looks provided just because of the gravity. Having a focus on keeping Cade and Ivy out of the mid-range level or just in the paint at all, getting downhill. All that gravity shifted, extra help guys being sent is going to create open looks. So getting guys like Hendricks in a corner along with Bojan just what helps the spacing so much, and it's just going to open the playing field even more for Cade and Ivy to be able to do their thing as well.
And if you ask me, I mean, Ivy came into the NBA last year, and we didn't know what he was going to do shooting-wise, and he shot incredibly well. I think he shot just below league average from 3, had amazing shot creation off the dribble as well, and catch and shoot, I think he was around 40%, right? So when you have those 2 guys handling the ball, with Duren setting screens for them, either it's a pull-up 3, it's a mid-range, it's a lob, it's a layup, or it's a dish to Bojan or Hendricks in the corner. I mean, the spacing those 2 players would have would simply give them the freedom to basically score 20 a game each. If you ask me.
Yeah.
As long as Hendricks' shot translates and him and Bojan are shooting 40% from the corners, that right there, those 5 players, I mean, virtually is unguardable, if you ask me. So
as long as
that's why Hendricks. That's why Hendricks is so clearly in play at 5. It's not a reach. None of these guys are reaches at all. Even if you're higher in Cam Whitmore, if you're highest on Cam Whitmore and Hendricks goes 5, it isn't a reach.
Right.
It just isn't a reach.
Yeah. Especially pinning on that point where we talked about the Pistons at this point basically drafting for fit. I mean, they have the luxury of already having their likely 1, 2, and 3. They already have their 2 guys that are going to run an offense, and they have their centerpiece in Duren to be able to the front court centerpiece there. So you're drafting somebody who just fits them. And even if the player you pick at 5, if he pans out better than either of them, then I mean it's an incredible pick. But at this point, you're less worried about, okay, let's get somebody who matches them with ceiling. Yeah, you're getting somebody who can play with them.
You don't have the stress of needing that guy, because the hardest thing in the rebuild is finding that franchise guy. Mm-hmm. And I don't care what your opinion is on Cade. No bias aside. Cade is him. Cade will be him. Cade's coming back with the vengeance next year. 25-7-7, if you ask me. All-star appearance. Possibly third-team All-NBA if he leads the team to an 8 seed. I mean, that's how high I am on the guy from a leadership standpoint, from a playing standpoint. Ivy, I think, as well as a Robin the Cade, 19-6-6 isn't unreasonable. So those are 2 guys those are your cornerstones, those are your franchise players. Yeah. And then Duren Duren's basically going to be what Drummond was supposed to be, just sticking to his role, not having an ego, hustle plays, putbacks, lobs, just not playing outside of that role, right? In order to win, that's what Duren is.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect third, fourth option, even fifth option, So with this pick here, you want to get a guy that fits the culture, fits the character, fits the team personality, and projects to be good defensively, and projects to be able to catch and shoot open looks, right? And that's Hendricks. Yeah. That's Jarace Walker. That's Cam Whitmore. That's probably Ausar.
That's Ausar, yeah.
Every one of these
even
guys.
Brandon Miller. Even Brandon Miller can do it on the other end as well.
It's every single one of them.
Yep, you're looking at right now. No matter what, you're getting somebody who's going to fit the system pretty well with any of these 5 guys. It's just a great spot for the Pistons to be in, even though it's not what they were hoping for. Is just as you said, we can talk about the impact of Cade Cunningham in another video. A lot of people are sleeping on him just because of the injury, but we know he was the number 1 pick for a reason. Some called him a generational guard prospect. Just an incredible player. Averaged 26 and 6 off with 2 injured shins that needed surgery this season.
1 injured shin.
Well, yeah. Well, playing injured, still averaging 26 and 6, and he's definitely a guy who also gets it done on the other end. A lot of people may not pay attention as much on defense, but anytime you can put up near league average defensive metrics while playing on a team as bad as the Pistons were the past couple of years, you can play some solid defense. We've seen him play solid defense against SGA, against Drew Holiday, Trae Young, some pretty good scores that he's been able to hold to lesser shooting nights. So just having that franchise guy already is just making this pick a lot easier. You already have another guy in Ivy that you're picking this player to play alongside with them. So like you said, all 5 guys are in play here. Only difference between our board and Weaver's board is that we have Hendricks and Ausar swapped. I think just in terms of the fit, Hendricks is a better fit than Ausar. However, I do believe that Weaver may prefer him at this point just because of the connection with OTE and possibly Kevin Ollie as the head coach, as well as I just think in general Cade is probably a big fan of Ausar in general, as he has tweeted in the past about the Thompson twins. But that's pretty much all we have for you guys in this video. We just want to break down those 5 guys. Again, we'll recap. It was Brandon Miller as probably number 1, Jarace Walker 2, Cam Whitmore 3, Ausar Thompson and Halo Hendricks are pretty much interchangeable at 4 and 5, depending on how you feel about whether reaching on a pick matters, if you can even consider him a reach. But regardless, the Pistons are in a great spot. If you have anything to add, you can go ahead and add that before we wrap up.
Yeah, one last thing I'll say is Weaver will empty the clip. He'll turn over every stone and just understand that he's going to get his guy at 5 no matter who it is. He doesn't care who. Just like last year, if Ivy went 4th to the Kings, Weaver was taking Duren at 5. He said that, and even looking back, would that have been a bad pick? In the moment, sure.
In the moment, yeah. But when you look back at it, he showed that he was worth a top 5 pick. Maybe not over some certain guys, but he could be a future top 5 at borderline top 3 or 4 center in the league one day. So, that's definitely his ceiling.
So that tells me Weaver's getting his guy. That could be Hendricks. That could be Ausar. It could be a guy we didn't mention. But he's going to walk away with his guy, and that's really what it is.
He operates a lot like Brad Holmes with the Lions. If he's got a guy in mind, he does not care what pick he has. If that's who he wants, he gets him. So
yeah, we have to remember we're talking about value pick here, value pick there. That's what, as a fan, no GM is picking a player and saying to themselves, that was good value. That doesn't exist in these GM.
Maybe if you have no roster. Maybe if you're just starting a rebuild, you just blew everything up. You have 15 picks like the Thunder at the time. They're looking for guys like Ousmane Dieng who they're like, okay, this is good value. We like this guy as a project. You can afford to go for it.
Those guys.
But in the situation of the Pistons, having basically nothing when they started their rebuild, they're at a point right now where they've got their 1, 2, and 3, and all they're drafting here is the best fit and somebody that Weaver truly believes in. So,
absolutely. But yeah, that wraps up our video. Our next video, we're going to be doing a full lottery breakdown. So look forward to that in the next couple of days. But I enjoyed having this conversation with you, Robo. And that's Kyle signing out from All Bark.
Yep. See ya.